And we are live. I feel like it's been a while since I've done one of these, but I'm so excited to be here with Heather Kaminetsky of Mytheresa. I've actually been personally and professionally connected to Heather for, I don't know, it's been like over 10 years, I think. My first
Yes.
time meeting Heather, she was director of digital marketing, right, for Barney's at the
Yes.
time.
Yes. It was early in my Barney's days. Yes.
And we'll get into sort of what has happened with some of these luxury retailers, but a little bit later on. But it was my first foray, I feel like, into luxury fashion was always with you, and you've always been at the leading edge of what works and actually like the most successful companies in the space. So super excited to be giving people access to your incredible brain and your incredible leadership too. But I am going to give further introduction again to Heather's background and what she's doing now. But I also just wanted to reintroduce myself. I'm Allie Wyatt, co founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective. This is our LinkedIn Live series. We love doing these for founders so that they can learn about how to uplevel their business, the tips and tricks of the trade from the experts and the best people in the field. But we also have our community, which is the 10th house. It's a private membership community. Right now, we are doing our fashion cohort. Our applications are open. They are closing on August 21st. So if you want to join that, you are going to get access such as this. We do private events as well. We just hosted a private event with Rebecca in New York City last week. We have some really fun events happening in LA as well. We are rotating between the two coasts every single month, but then we have a ton of virtual events that happen. And then, of course, you get access to each other and amazing resources inside as well. So definitely apply. This is something that I felt like I desperately wanted and needed in growing businesses is your network. And Heather, you can probably attest to this. Your network is so beyond important, and you don't necessarily realize that when you're sort of younger and trying to figure it out and do everything on your own. But you figure out very quickly that your network is such a shortcut if you build it in the right way and you have these great relationships. But with that, I'm going to go into Heather and everything that she's done in her career as well as where she is now. So she joined Mytheresa, which is, if you don't know about it, which I hope you do because it's incredible, a luxury e-commerce platform in 2021 as president of North America to strategically lead the expansion of Mytheresa business and brand in the United States and Canada. And she oversees and leads all of the brand's customer-facing activities in North American market, including personal shopping, communications, and affiliate marketing. And she is credited with extraordinary gross merchandise value, which is also known as GMV, of over 40% growth, which is just insane, especially given the market we've been in the past 3 years. And throughout her career, she's held executive positions in multiple companies, including Net-a-Porter, where she was vice president of global marketing. We also did some really fun things there.
Yes.
Borderfree, where she served as SVP of business management, and Barney's New York, where she was vice president of marketing, and Mgemi, where she most recently held the role of chief executive officer. So she has a ton of experience in this field. I'm going to dive into your background, though, in marketing and how that's really helped you in this current role. Like, what are some of the big lessons that you learned as you've been building various businesses throughout your career in marketing that you've then be able to translate into general management of the business at Mytheresa?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Allie. It's an honor to be here. And to everyone who's listening in, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. Um, so there's so many things that I've learned through my career. I honestly believe that every experience I've had within every company has taught me another stepping stone for the next experience that I've had. And marketing itself, it's interesting. So I started my career back when e-commerce was really getting going. And at the time, there wasn't a such thing as like brand marketing and performance marketing. And CAC was a number that only a few people knew who were doing, just so you know, back then when we bid on Google keywords, it was literally in a Microsoft program called Access. I'm sure like 90% of the people on this call don't even know what that is. But this is like back when everything started getting going. And I think that there's so many lessons that I've learned that are helping me today. But the real key that through all my career has been really understanding who your customer is. And I know it's cliche and everyone talks about it, but it's really a lesson for everyone on staying true to who the customer is and finding the customer where they are and how they want to be communicated to is really the key to marketing.
Yeah. And I think it's a really good point, especially in that, yes, it feels obvious, but at the same time, there's so many marketing encompasses everything now, right? It's content
Yeah.
creation, it's PR, it is thinking about, like you said, the search engine marketing. And so how do you focus? And I love that. Is there a way in which you pin that down? We've had some founders in the community ask about, like, how do I know who my customer is? Right? Like, are there certain companies you work with or agencies, or like, how do you figure that out?
So I personally spend a lot of time with our customers, like actually. So in my role at Mytheresa, so most recently, we do a tremendous amount of activity and I go and meet the customer. Truly, like we have a store in East Hampton, I work the floor. We go to Arkansas, I go everywhere. And I have an incredible team that really we listen. There's so much listening. And I think when I was earlier in my career, honestly, I probably did a lot of talking and not as much listening as I should have.
As
And
we all do
one
it
of
we're younger.
yeah, I feel like everyone does that. Like you, but I don't know. Like I was sitting actually years ago when I was at Net-a-Porter. I was sitting, I'll never forget this, at ABC Kitchen. I was meeting with one of our top clients, and she was telling me everything I was doing wrong. It was actually kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And I left 3 hours later and really listened to her. And we had 3 major programs we ran for the following 2 years, all based on this one client and her thoughts about what we were doing wrong.
How do you qualify or quantify those clients, right? Like, because I often find in business, you have very vocal customers. Those aren't necessarily your most valuable customers in terms of numbers, right? So how do you know when to listen to the loud people versus like is it the people that have been done the most orders, who have the highest average order value? How are you quantifying that?
A lot of frequency. I think frequency tells a story. Frequency to your website, frequency to your business, like the frequency, right, is kind of what the loyalty is. So if you have someone who frequently purchases, frequently visits the site, frequently uses your app or whatever your program is, that frequency tells a story
Yeah.
because they want to be engaged. They feel emotionally loyal to you in one way or another. So I do look at frequency a lot. Obviously, spend plays over time as your business gets larger. Spend plays a story, but a lot of times the spend and the frequency go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I also look at full price customers versus markdown customers. There's a very big difference between those two over time and when they buy within a season. Again, everyone's business is different, but a lot of when someone buys tells you a lot about what type of customer they are, and that's important, right? Like if you have people buying leather jackets in the middle of the summer, they're probably first to market and they want the hottest and newest because they can't wear it today. It's like 80 degrees outside. But
Yeah.
like, you know, they're loyal. They know they want it. They want it then. And that frequency is important. But the customer file, Even when you're just starting, the customer file is so important. And even when you create product, I would say, like sitting down, like who are you building it for? What's the problem you're trying to solve? And checking that with people to make sure that there's an audience for it.
And then are you building out, okay, there are multiple customer profiles within the Mytheresa umbrella, and then you have different marketing tactics that speak to each one of those?
We have a top customer tier that has different services, I would say, than just a standard client. Um, our personal shopping is a service that we provide to clients who are within the top customer category. It's not open to everyone. And there's other services we provide just to specific clients. And then a lot of our performance marketing tactics have to do with um, the type of customer, the type of target we're trying to go after, and then how much we'll spend against all those different targets. Like there's a lot of algorithmic work done in the background.
Any specific, and I know this is kind of this is getting
No,
nitty gritty, but every, I think our people that are following, it's like they want specifics. So are there any tools that you use that you find especially helpful in sort of monitoring that data or helping you to analyze that data? Because it's just like there's so much data out there, right? It's hard to know which ones to listen to or like any specific CRM platform that you use that you found helpful in automating this a little bit for you, even though you're meeting with people in person.
okay, so at Mytheresa, we do pretty much everything in-house.
Yeah. Wow.
I also believe that there is analysis paralysis that does exist when
Yeah.
people start a company. Like there are not 100 KPIs, key performance indicators, that you need to be looking at every day. There's
Yeah.
like certain metrics that you should be looking at all the time. You want to know how much the cost of your new customer, right? Your CAC, like how much is it costing you on different platforms? And then the value of the customer that you bring in over time on that specific platform. There's just I do find, because I try to advise companies also, like you could get lost. You really could get lost
Yeah.
because there's so many tools. CRM tools. So we do not use it at Mytheresa, but in my past I've used Salesforce. I loved it as a tool. I don't know at all. I know when people are starting out, it could be quite expensive. I think there was once upon a time, I don't even know if it exists anymore. I apologize. There was a company called Sugar CRM that I always thought was really good, but I
Yeah.
don't even know if they exist.
But you do it all in house.
We do everything
Wow.
in house.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
We're very tight though on our
Yeah.
performance marketing. It's not like we're putting, like we have affiliate marketing, we have SEA, SEO, um, and then a little bit of display, which is also quite uncommon
Yeah.
in the field. People are, marketing all over the place. It's like very targeted, very tight.
So that there's not a lot of waste. So let's get into the broader market, because I know you just referenced that display is not common, but among luxury e-commerce brands, there's been sort of unprecedented changes and declining sales over the last year. But Mytheresa has been able to avoid that, with the US operations contributing significantly to it. So, can you talk about some of those shifts that are happening in the industry, and then what you think and what you can really attribute Mytheresa's growth to?
Yeah. So there's a lot of things happening in the industry. From Matches closing, and then there's obviously Coupang purchased Farfetch. I think for Mytheresa, the story is really that we are truly the premier luxury edit. So what does that actually mean, right? So there's a lot of brands that Mytheresa carries that other companies carry as well. However, if you look at the curation, the product edit underneath the brand, it's a completely different curation. Our consumer is an affluent consumer that wardrobe builds. They want they want the styles as soon as they hit the market. They have no time. Their luxury time is their biggest luxury. So where Mytheresa comes in is if you're looking for something, if you have an occasion coming up, we really have the finest curation out there. And I really believe that that's what the differentiator is. And then why do I think it's been successful? I think there's so many layers to Mytheresa, from the talent pool. So the team at Mytheresa, many people have been around a really long time, and that ability to keep talent and to grow talent within a company and not have, so much turn really helps a company grow even further. I mean, we've been in the US, we've been doing this a little over 3 years, and it's almost the exact team that I had originally hired back when I started. So that consistency and that knowledge consistency really helps. We focus a lot, I know I've spoken about it, but our customers, our community, going to where the customer is. Our marketing is extraordinarily targeted. And, we at Mytheresa really focus on profitability, but not at the expense of growth. Like we have profitable growth, if you will. So our planning is done in a way where we're able to grow year on year, but operationally, and our spend is kept in a way where we can maintain our profitability over time.
So I want to hear more about that, because I think there's not enough spoken about profitability and like what that actually means, how you get there. But I want to go back to the team thing too, because I think that's super important. And as your founder thinking about growth, what does that mean? Because I was once told by a male founder, but he's like, you got to burn them and churn them, bring in soldiers who are just going to like grind. And then when they're no longer grinding, then they're out. And I was like, that feels so inefficient as like trying to grow a business. And I'm going to go do the opposite. So I always believed in like investing and finding the best people initially. I want to hear from your perspective, like what are some of the ways that you identify talent in team construction, and then how you keep those people on board?
Yeah. So I actually, someone once said something that stuck with me. So they said, I build a team of athletes. So what does that mean? I don't actually hire people who play sports. What it is it's a group of people that are all working towards the same goal, right? They're passionate, they love it, like there's the energy is right. Obviously you need to have a skill set, right? So it's easier to assess a skill. Is this person intelligent? Do they communicate well? Those are things that you could tell quickly, and then from prior experience the skills that they have. But we all know that's not what this is really about. It's about that passion and that energy and that drive.
Yeah.
And I surround myself with people who have all of that. And we all work together. And sometimes, like, there's an injured man or woman and someone comes in, right? So it's this, I think of it literally almost like a basket. So I played basketball. So I love basketball. The Knicks, if anyone's like a big Knicks fan. But and I think of my team that way. Like
Yeah.
we're all working towards the same goal. And I think that when I interview people or when I find people, that's always what I'm looking for. Like, are they going to join this team? Are we going to win? Like, how
Yeah.
are we going to win? Like the Olympics, amazing. Like you look at those teams, they're individual contributors all playing for their country's team.
Yeah. I love it. Are there any questions you ask that like helps you, or any part of your process that helps you to evaluate people on that metric versus like their skills?
So the skills are definitely one piece. I mean, I believe in every person you are going to hire, you need to meet in real life. I try when possible to meet in a restaurant to see how they treat the staff. I know that's also
Oh,
like,
so interesting.
I'm picking garbage off the floor. Like no one's too high or
Yeah.
low. Like we're all in this together. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
That's so interesting.
yeah, like I want to see how they treat people, how they communicate. Like what happens? It's a long time ago, but somebody told me a story that they brought someone to a restaurant. This is where I got the idea from because I thought it was clever. And they specifically had the server bring the wrong order. I've never done that, to see how the person reacted to that. Did they keep the food that they didn't order? Like, or did they address it? And how did they address it? I've never done that. But I always thought that was interesting.
That's an interesting one though. Yeah, because like otherwise, how are you going to sort of identify how people will treat somebody? But yeah, that's a big one. I can't stand when people treat servers poorly in
Yeah. And
restaurants.
it's also the other thing I would say is it's a very small world. I do
Mhm.
a lot of background checking. I do.
Yeah,
Um, I have
not
a
just through referrals, but like
no,
finding people who mutually know them and whatnot.
for sure. I mean, the whole thing with referrals, it's cute, but like, would you ever put someone down who is going to give you a bad reference?
Yeah, right.
No.
It's true. I always say that too. I like to check beyond the reference sheet to like get a real feel for it. Um, I think that's a really good point, and it's really important for us as founders too. And it's interesting how short-sighted people can be on like not closing up a project properly, or you know, I think a lot of things can happen on the way out. That from a founder perspective, it's really good to know those things. And then in terms of growth and profitability, how have you made sure that those two are hit simultaneously, right? Like, how do you, especially for a luxury brand, right? That was something that at Goop we always had challenges with, because it's like we don't want to diminish value. We want to keep the highest possible tier of value, but at the same time want to ensure that we're growing. We have to, right? We had investors, and or we had to sort of initially get to a place financially that was very different from where we started.
I think it's really hard when you're starting a company, honestly, because the investors want growth, right? Like their whole thing is growth and you're
Yeah.
trying to grow, but it's hard to be profitable when you are trying to achieve almost unrealistic expectations. And I think that becomes the biggest problem that I've seen over time.
Is unrealistic expectations on growth.
Yeah.
And
Like be,
in terms of managing that, especially in marketing, right? Because like a lot of times
yeah.
those expectations fall on the marketing team, right? Like you're like, these numbers are my numbers to own and execute on. How do you get to the right numbers and then sort of manage those expectations?
It's very hard. So I think, and tell me if you think this is wrong, but when direct to consumer brands started out, so there was a product, and then in order to get people to buy the product, you bought people's attention predominantly digitally, right? To come back to your website to buy a product that they had never seen before. And I think that the reason everyone did this was because it was the fastest way to grow.
Yeah.
But I think people really need to take a minute. So let's say, I don't know, I'm going to use a baby bottle. I just don't have a better example. Let's say you were creating a baby bottle, right? And you know what your margins are and you know what you could spend. Is it that you want to buy people right away? Or do you find a partnership in a local community hospital? I don't know, something clever to get the
Yeah.
product into the hands of people who will need the bottle and then find a way to monetize those people versus just buying people.
Yeah.
Because your frequency and your customer might be higher if you got it into the hand of someone who told their friend, this is amazing, have you heard about this,
Yeah.
versus just buying people and then forcing them to rebuy. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, and that's the spiral.
Yeah. Well, I think that a lot of direct to consumer brands got into a lot of trouble, frankly, because they were almost entirely reliant on the buy and CAC being in a certain place. Then CAC
Yes.
skyrocketed because everybody was doing that, right? And so it became harder and harder to bid for things, got more expensive. And then it came to a point where now you have to just think about and do things differently and a little bit more
Yeah.
organically. How are you guys, outside of display, like what are some of the tactics in your marketing plan that you've been like, this really has worked well for us, especially as a luxury brand, right? Like, and how do you keep it luxury while still getting that performance?
So we went back to grassroots, and literally meeting the customer where they are. So our our strategy, while we have all the performance marketing and we are a digital e-commerce platform, everything else we do is really offline. So we go so there's a bunch of different ways that we meet our customer. We go to different communities and do dinners just to meet people. We do shopping events with hosts who are current clients and they invite their friends in different communities. We've been in the Carolinas, Arkansas, Wyoming, Colorado, obviously New York, California, Texas, Florida, just going. We just go and meet people and meet them where they are in their community. And that for us has been like the unlock in the success. And clients who, like customers of ours, in addition to all of what I just told you, how we meet new people, surprise, delight, and experiences are really important for us with our existing customer base. And that's something that we put a lot of resources, dollars into, because yes, the digital website is amazing, but it's very transactional. Luxury is like an emotion. And the only
Yeah.
way to really get emotion is to meet with people, to see them, to hear them, to learn about how they live and what they need. And that really, truly has been where our success has come from in the States.
I love that. And I actually got to go to one of these lunches and I met, by the way, like ended up a lot of those people ended up becoming great friends and I didn't know them that well or I just met them that day. And so you're also like creating community.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's like that halo and people remember that. That's a surprise and delight too. In terms of like getting them back on like online into your stores and actually ordering
Yeah.
product, how do you do that? And then from like a return perspective, right? So you're ordering a luxury good from your site.
Yep.
What if people want to return it? What if, or what about fit? Like, how do you address things like that? Particularly with like shoes, I find tend to be the hardest sort of category
Yeah.
to buy online.
Yeah. So, I mean, Mytheresa has a large number of exclusive products and capsules that we work with our brand partners all year. And a lot of
Mhm.
our existing customers, they come back because they want to see what's new. Um, we have a very social client. So they have a lot of events and dinners. And so that drives a lot of the traffic and purchase on the site. The content that we create tries to drive that message as well. Like, have your gown for this Saturday night. Like, what are you doing for
Yeah.
Thanksgiving? Different ways to drive people and think about us. Regarding like the e-commerce business, yes, of course, people return. I will say we only have 250 brands on our website. Most of our clients have an idea of what size they are. A
I was
lot
going
of
to
the
say they
brands,
probably,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, a lot of the brands are, I mean, we have American brands, but also French and Italian and other countries. But I mean, the return is part of being an e-commerce business. It's just baked into your numbers because you know people are going to return.
got it. And so as founders are also thinking about like, what does that look like? Just make sure it's baked into your model. In other
Yeah,
words,
people will return. It's just happening. It's the way of the world.
yeah, yeah. I actually have a good resource for you that I'm going to send you after this that is in that
Hey.
world. Actually, I just thought about it. I'm like, ooh. Um, and then can you, in terms of like the brands that have imploded, can you speak a little bit on that? Right? Like, why is that? Why is that happening? Obviously, there's consolidation happening, but for the brands that didn't make it, what do you think the main reasons were? If you had to venture to guess.
Okay, so I do not work at these companies. These are my own thoughts. This is not Mytheresa. This is just Heather speaking.
Yeah.
I think Matches was somewhere along the way a management error of some sort
Yeah.
because I don't understand how like the Frasers bought them and then 3 months later decided to close them. Like something, I don't know. Like
Interesting.
I don't know how that happens. I mean, I don't know. Um and then I mean the Farfetch program, I, as an individual, have never fully understood Farfetch in the luxury space in particular, even just as a consumer. Um, I always tell this story, but I think it was like, I want to say 2018, 2019, and I was on Sunset Boulevard, like in LA. And there was this billboard of this beautiful woman in a white poplin shirt. And the tagline was something to the effect of find the 4,523 best poplin shirts you've ever seen. And I remember I took a picture of it and I
You're
sent
like,
it
that
to
sounds horrible.
someone over at Farfetch. And I was like, are you trying to deter everyone from going onto your platform? Like, that's not luxury to me.
Yeah.
Luxury is here's the 10 best from the best luxury companies out there.
Yeah, because
And
it's a
I
time
think,
thing again.
yeah. And I think they lost, if you ask me with this is just my own, I think they lost their way. Like
Yeah.
the original concept of a mom and pop shop in the middle of Portugal being able to ship globally and having that resource is amazing. But then I think it went sideways. Like it was just too many businesses trying to get too big. And I think they
Yeah.
lost their way.
Yeah. What about the brands that you think have like really shown up this year? And I want to get into partnerships too, because I
Yeah.
think that is just such a underutilized part of the marketing mix and just overall growth opportunity for companies and brands. But what are some brands or platforms do you think have done a really good job?
Um, so I
Even with
still love,
headwinds?
yeah. I mean, I don't know how these companies are doing financially, but um, I think, I mean, I still love Goop. I,
Yeah.
I do. I have no idea how as a business they're doing, but there are these like content commerce plays that do still exist that I'm fascinated by. But the one thing I will say about all the companies that I like is that they've all had some sort of physical destination experience to drive customers to touch and feel them as a company. And I don't just mean the
Mhm.
product. I mean the people who represent the product. I really I look at pop-ups all the time because I think that is like the best way to connect and create emotion with your customer.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've become a customer of so many different brands through that avenue where it was just that one time. And then I became a customer ever after because I tried on those pair of jeans. I tried on that shirt and I was like, oh, this is an amazing fit.
Yeah.
And I met the people and I really loved them and I wanted to support them. So I totally agree with that and I love that. Let's talk about partnerships because
Sure.
you guys have done some really interesting ones. How have you decided who to partner with, one, and two, how do you make it beneficial for everybody involved?
So the way that we do partnerships is looking at companies that are complementary to us, not competitive, will drive new customers. So that's a big thing for me is like I want new customers. Um, and those are really actually the two things that we look at, right? That they have an affinity to the same type of customer that we do.
Not competitive, drive new customers.
Yeah, that's like really important. And then you have to, I mean, partnerships need to be a partnership like anything in
Yeah.
life. So you need to be compatible with the people you're going to work with. Um, and we've been quite lucky. Like we're now our third pop up, second time in East Hampton with Flamingo Estate. So Richard, a
Love that.
friend of a friend, had introduced me to Richard. And again, our businesses are completely different, but the people who are Mytheresa's customer have Flamingo Estates product all throughout the house. Like
Mhm.
it's the same. We've done partnerships with the travel company Indigari. So
Yeah.
these are people that, organize large trips across the globe. We've partnered with them and introduced their clients to our personal shoppers. The first interaction they have is what to pack for where they're going.
Love that.
So again, a different type of partnership. So there's
Is there like a co-registration component? Like how do you ensure that there's data capture and new customer additions that come to your list on both sides?
Yeah, so sorry. I thank you for bringing that up. So for instance in East Hampton and the pop-up we did in LA, you actually can't enter unless you register.
Amazing.
Um yeah, so and there are people that don't want to register and then they
Yeah.
just walk away and that's their right. Um but
Bye.
that's okay. No, like everyone, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. Um, but that is, yes, data capture. Everything we do, there's a data capture component with two opt-ins. It's can spam compliant. You have the option to opt out. But that is like the key.
Yeah.
And then we look
Absolutely.
at those cohorts. So that's also super interesting. So the thousands of people that come to the pop up or come to the experiences, we then watch them over the year.
To see who is like the best long-term value from a customer perspective. And then you double down and keep going with that partner. So I
Yes.
love that. I think
Yes.
that's so key too. A lot of times we don't measure on the back end. But I also love that you put in place, I think too often as companies, like we're like, this would be a cool partnership, but we don't put any numbers against what does success look like, right? And then at the end,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, that was so much work and it didn't work. But like, what does what does good look like? What does actually success look like? And I think often, if you don't ask yourself that up front, then there's no way to have it on the back end. But I love that you are also measuring it. You also did a partnership with Dolce and Gabbana.
Yes. So our brand partners, we do a lot of programming across the globe with. So we recently have done a Valentino escape client activity boat on a boat called the Christie O, which actually was an Onassis property that Jackie O and many other like Marilyn Monroe was on the boat, like crazy things. Um, and with Dolce, we had an event in Capri, a 2-day event. celebrating a capsule. So again, it commercially ties back to something from the Valentino Escape capsule, the Dolce and Gabbana capsule. You now have a collection that's tied to a client experience. The clients, like you mentioned, they all build their community coming to these different events. And while, yes, it's amazing for social content and content in general, what I enjoy the most is after the event, hearing how the clients are now in touch with other clients. And the one thing that comes up over the years is Mytheresa introduced us at this event,
Oh,
right? So, like, you create this community.
absolutely love that. So it's like, yeah, there's the intangibles and the tangibles. Um, and then I'm sure you're getting pitched all the time by brands to come onto the platform. And like you said, you only have 250 brands on the platform, which sounds like a lot to me, but but I know that it's not versus a lot of other e-commerce sites. Can you speak to what you guys look for and any recommendations for brands as they're like, I really would love to be carried here or another platform? Like, what are you looking for? What metrics are important? How do brands differentiate themselves when they're coming to you?
Yeah, this is like a really hard question, and I am so we're always pitched, but I think the one thing is when people are pitching, a lot of times it's not just that the like we're not interested, it's that the product is not for our client.
Mm,
So I can't tell you how many times, it might be an amazing product, it just doesn't fit into who we are,
yeah.
right? So who our consumer is. And a lot of times also the buyers, when we're trying to, fill a gap, they'll go find people. So it doesn't hurt to reach out, but it's typically hard because a lot of times it's like not exactly what our client is looking for. And the buyers are really good. Um, in order, at least at Mytheresa, in order to onboard a brand, we need to exit a brand. That's like literally how it works.
Wow.
So it's more challenging than other companies. But I think that, doing your research, making sure your product really is for the company that you're pitching. Um, if there's a way, that the product could somehow even get to the buyers, like our buyers are really good when they see things like they just know. But I am not jealous of those who are trying to pitch in. It's hard. It's hard.
That is hard in terms of the limitations too. We only have a couple more minutes left.
Oh,
I have some, I know it went fast. It went very
but
fast,
fast.
very fast. I'm just going through some of the questions from our audience to see um,
Okay.
this is from Pooja. Can you discuss any challenges or unexpected obstacles you faced during this period of rapid growth? And just from she said she sees failures as very valuable learnings, which I think is such a good way to put it. What do you feel like are some of the most valuable learnings, either from this period of your career or over the course of your career? And that's a big one to end on. But I love it as sort of like what are some of the biggest lessons?
So risk. It's so funny. I just spoke about this. So when I was at Barney's, I made a huge mistake. I will never forget this as long as I live. There was a major French. I thought I knew everything. I was like a computer science major. I'm like 26 years old. I think I know everything. And I walked into a meeting with a French maison. It's a true story. And I basically embarrassed Barney's. Like the idea was that they didn't want to be on the website. We were building the website, and this brand happened to have been on eBay. And the CEO, family name of this maison, started screaming at me in French. I had no idea what he was saying. It's a true story. Anyway, I thought my presentation was amazing. Like, wouldn't you rather be on Barney's than on eBay?
Yeah.
And anyway, after the meeting, the CEO actually called me in and he told me that in my career, I need to be 80% right, that I have 20% that I could fail, but 80%. So So why is this important? Because you have to take risks. So there's a lot of risks that we take, but they're calculated risks. And one of the biggest challenges that I've actually had in this role is that people really didn't know who Mytheresa was. When I first started for my first year, people thought I worked for Mother Teresa. They kept it, they kept literally, they would be like, "Oh, that's so nice. You went to the nonprofit sector." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't work for a nonprofit." And getting people to, the number of people that hung up the phone on me the first year was really rough. Honestly, the failure was incredible.
Yeah.
Like, we're not interested. We don't know who you are. And like, we just kept plowing through. So
Yeah.
my biggest thing is like, don't give up and try new things.
Yeah.
Like, you have to keep trying.
Yeah. You just got to keep going. I think that's probably the base part of being a founder. And frankly, in general, and somebody asked about what do you attribute your rise in your career to? I think it's just the people that keep going. You see this with the Olympians. You see this with the
Yeah.
people that like ultimately make it. You just pick yourself back up, right? So I love that. The 80-20 rule in terms of, 80%,
Risk.
right? You got to take risks and you got to keep going, just keep trying and plowing forward. So Heather, this has been so helpful, so
Thank you for having
appreciate
me.
all of this information because it's true, you've lived through the top of the fashion industry your whole career, and so you really have unique insight into it, so really appreciate this wisdom. And for everybody that's listening, thank you so much for joining in. And friendly reminder, August 21st, we close our fashion cohort. So it's coming up very soon. More conversations like this inside, and then also the tools and tricks of the trade in terms of how to get ahead and up level. So thanks everyone. Happy Tuesday. And Heather, so good to see your face. I'll
You
talk
too. Thank you for having me.
to you. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.